You're from Irvine, California?
Well, actually, not Irvine, but I grew up in Southern California. Yeah, I actually grew up in Chino, and lived there until I was 20.
The shade of the prison. Lovely.
Exactly. Not far from there.
I am from a little town called West Covina, and
I'm very familiar.
yeah, our city slogan was "Where the sewer meets the sea."
Right.
It's lovely. Uh, and congratulations on everything that you've done. You seem to really capture thrillers. I mean, are you a fan of the thriller genre?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan. I mean, I grew up in a movie family, a family that loved movies, and in particular, we loved horror movies, we loved action movies, but I think the dark thrillers are the ones that really kind of captured our imaginations the most. And the dark thrillers that I've done have been some of the most fun ones. And Cult Killer is definitely like right there at the top.
Yeah, and it truly is a white knuckle ride. And I think the writing on this is so crisp and so new. As a film critic and as a movie buff too, you kind of see the same plot over and over again, but this is just so well done and
It
refreshing.
It really is. And Charles Burnley and Charles the writer, Charles and I have been friends for 25 years. And Charles is a huge fan of film noir and, LA Confidential and the early Kubricks and all of those. And he's just got such a crisp way of writing, an original way of writing. And he's got his dialogue. I just love his dialogue. I'm so in love with Charles's dialogue. And so when Charles sent me over the first draft of the script, I couldn't put it down. And I was just like, I have to make this movie, Charles. We have to make this movie. And thank God we got to do it because his writing, I'm so happy to kind of show the world what an incredible writer he is.
Yeah, and let's talk about the dialogue because there are certain rhythms to dialogue. Like I think about the Hudsucker Proxy, that kind of crisp, 1930s. Hey, I'm from Muncie, that kind of thing.
Exactly.
And then there's the thriller rhythm, which you've captured really well. Your actors too. I mean, Alice Eve is no slouch. Antonio
Not at all.
Banderas, Shelley Henning. What a crew! What a group of people to put this together.
I mean, being able to work with them, I directed Antonio before, so I knew Antonio. And one of the things I think when Antonio read the script and we talked about it, the first thing out of his mouth was, "I don't want to change a word in this script." He's like, "The dialogue is absolutely perfect, and I love everything about it." And once we put him and Alice together in their scenes, the two of them were just popping. They found a rhythm with Charles's dialogue, and Charles was there getting to watch him film it. But the way that they kind of worked off of each other and played with that dialogue, and same thing for Shelley when Shelley came in and started doing her thing with Alice. They just kind of popped with each other and they found a rhythm, and all of them, the three of them continuously were kind of commending Charles on his dialogue. They're like, "We don't want to change any of your words. The rhythm's perfect. It feels good. It's natural coming out, but it's telling a story." And I love that. I love that sort of old crime noir feeling to his writing.
In putting this together, was there a chemistry read? Did you guys get together and read the script, or was it a Zoom type thing?
It was a Zoom type of thing. It was a Zoom type of thing, and it was funny. Was so Alice was Antonia was the first person on board, and Antonia and I kind of talked through it and walked through it, and then Alice came on second. And Alice and Antonio and the three of us spent some time together talking and kind of working it through, and especially Alice and Antonio wanting to kind of develop the relationship for their characters. Shelley, because of who her character is, I mean, Shelley and I spent a lot of time working together and kind of going through the character and understanding that character. But she and Alice felt the same way. They really didn't want to spend any time talking to each other before filming because of the nature of their relationship. And both they were obviously aware of each other, but being able to kind of just step onto set and kind of get into it. And we filmed most of their stuff chronologically, so it worked really well for them to kind of develop that relationship in continuity.
Yeah, that's an actor's dream is to be able to do it chronologically so that they can build their emotions properly. It's a gift.
It is, and it was fortunate. We were very fortunate in being able to do that, and particularly for audiences that'll end up seeing it, you've seen it, but with all of the split screen scenes between the two of them, it was really important to me before we even started casting the movie. It was important to me. I wanted to be able to shoot all of the split screen stuff in at the same time.
Yeah.
So part of the location's job was to go out and find us locations where we could be shooting both sides of that, cameras rolling, earwigs in their ears so they could hear each other, and being able to do all of that in real time with each other was spectacular.
And I love that, feel of going back to that retro split screen stuff. Like, everybody's going to mention Soderbergh, but I go all the way back to like Top Cocky and those, the original, what was that? The original was a heist movie where they did that too. Just, it adds so much to the audience's enjoyment of the thrilling parts of the, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and Charles, in the first draft of the script, Charles is a huge fan of Narc, and of course they used it, and he there was just one scene with the split screen in it, and I was like, Charles, this is really intriguing. Why did you put this in? And he's like, I just thought it'd be kind of cool. And I'm like, well, I think we need to play with it even more. Let's do until the two of them actually have to come face to face. Let's play this all in split screen with the two of them. So we went back and kind of tooled the script so that we could do that split screen. And I think it's we've all seen it, but it's not something that everybody's using. So I felt like it became a fresh take again on being able to play with it.
No, I loved it. And again, I'm avoiding talking about the plot. And there's only two reasons why I would. One, it was, it could be terrible, but two, it is so good. I want the audience to discover it. And you definitely are in that second category because
I appreciate that.
Everything that goes on in this is important. And the audience has to pay attention, not only to the front, but to what's happening in the back. Just all of that information makes sense, as the film completes itself.
Absolutely. And that was something, and I think that's one of the reasons why people who are watching it so far and are reacting so positively to it. It's an intelligent thriller. And that was something that I really appreciated. Charles is definitely not the kind of guy that likes to write something that's just a throwaway. He's smart and he's intelligent. And I think that kind of keeps you invested in the movie because you have to, we try to, any good movie wants to stay just a step or two ahead of the audience to keep them moving along, keep them pulling. And I felt like his script did that. And I feel like the movie does that also.
What do you think audiences are going to take away from watching the film?
I mean, with obviously, like you said, without giving away the plot and certain things. And I mean, I think there's some messaging that's taking place, in it. I think there's a lot of relevant news that surrounds that plot and stuff. I think at the end of the day, what I really want out of a movie is, I mean, obviously, first, what we all want, we want to be entertained. We want to kind of spend 90 minutes, 2 hours, being entertained and enjoying what we're watching. I want audiences to walk away just feeling like, they were entertained for 90 minutes, they were impacted emotionally, and that they liked the characters, they felt for the characters, and I want them to feel something for those characters when that movie's over with, and I think that we've achieved that.
And I also want to touch on this that we're talking about it. It's a wonderful thriller. It's a white knuckle ride. We've said that, but you also allow your characters to have a little bit of humor running through this too, which is so wonderfully relieving. Especially as the roller coaster is going back up. It's just so well put together.
Well, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. Well, and I think some of that also comes into, like, growing up, Hitchcock was one of my idols. And Hitchcock was the master of being able to infuse his white knuckle suspense films with humor. And I think that humor is a necessary thing. There's so many movies out right now, and I kind of told this to everybody when we set out to make it, is there's so many movies that just kind of play on one field. There's one kind of vibe, one kind of tone to it, and that gets monotonous and that kind of gets boring and stuff. And I think the humor in a dark movie is really important because it makes what is dark and horrifying that much more so. But the humor also makes you then care about those characters even more. And like you said, it's that roller coaster, the peaks and valleys, and it keeps you invested.
Now, as a director, are you going to hop and and change genres a little bit? Are you going to do romantic comedies and musicals? things like that?
I've always said I'm a storyteller first, and I would love to actually hit all the genres. I'd love to play in all the genres, but it all kind of boils down to story, and characters and story is the first and most important thing, regardless of what genre it is. But yeah, I'd love to kind of play across the board. I've even got a musical.
Well, there you go. Growing up in Southern California, I'm assuming that you were a fan of Seymour and those things, Chiller Theater and things like
Oh,
that.
100%. Absolutely. No, I grew up. It was funny as my grandfather was a bit actor in the 40s. And so we kind of grew up loving the black and whites and the old classics and stuff. And then my aunt became started doing Halloween houses in the early 70s before that was a thing.
Yeah.
And so all the sort of the genre things, I grew up with all of the genre loves, and was heavily involved in all of that.
I used to go up to Forey Ackerman's place for Halloween with Rick Baker. I went to school with Rick.
Loved. Oh, I love Rick. Rick is phenomenal. Yeah, I grew up with all of those guys, Rick and Tom Savini and everybody.
Tom. Uh, and again, my aunt was June Foray, the voice actress, the
Oh,
voice
wow.
and all that. So I grew up in the voice industry, and I love black and white movies. I mean, I love that sense of humor from the '60s and all of that. So yeah, it's just a this is such a
Well,
throwback for me.
well, I appreciate that. And that's something I enjoy doing. And I've done that with a few of my movies where I try to keep it contemporary. I try to keep it modern. I try to make something that obviously a modern audience is going to like. But I'm so heavily influenced by the history of film and the things that have made genres throughout the decades, important to all of us, that I try to infuse my movies with those. And I'm glad that came through on this.
Yeah, and I'm recommending that everybody go see this who's in love with that type of thriller. I mean, we sometimes think thrillers are gory and use that, but yours is. I love the use of shadow. I love what you did with. Oh, by the way, the music, the score. Wow.
Aoife and Jerry, these two musicians, I've known them. They had a band called Moth Complex. They're out of Ireland, and they it was an old industrial goth band. And I've known them for years, and I've used a lot of their music in movies. But about a year before this was made, Aoife and Jerry and I were all talking, and they were like, "Yeah, we're really kind of interested in getting into score." And so on one of my previous movies, I had them do some music for it. I just wanted to kind of get a taste. And I just was astounded with the complexity of their music and what they were able to put together. They ended up doing both Cult Killer and my next movie, Cleanup Crew, and two vastly different musical scores, but so intriguing. And I'm glad to hear you say that because I was so proud and so happy to have them score these movies for me.
And when you say it's complex, for this movie, it really is. The complexity is simple. I mean, it's just a simple score, but boy, it really underlines everything that's going on. And I noticed stuff like that. That why am I getting more and more like and the music is informing me.
It is, and the thing that's always important to me about music, which is what I loved about them, was like you said, music needs to be informing. It's carrying along the emotional journey of for the audience and for the characters. But too often, it's also very on the nose. And the thing that I thought was so great about what they did from the get go, they were writing music before we were even filming, was they were able to underscore it and they were be able to provide that current without ever feeling like they were overtaking it and forcing you to feel something.
Well, before we end our wonderful conversation here, and by the way, thank you so much. I'm going to start following you on social media as well, and we're going to become best friends.
I love it.
Um, I can watch Alice Eve just do read the phone book. I mean, she is just an amazing. I mean, yeah, we all know she's gorgeous, but she is such a wonderful and deep actress.
She really is. She really is. And this was the first time I'd worked with Alice, and I was so impressed. I've always been a fan, but I was so impressed about how far she likes to delve into the character, get into the character's skin, into that mindset. She's meticulous and she's incredibly smart with her characters and with the dialogue and with an understanding of the scenes. And I think it's one of the best things she's done. And I know Alice, I talked with her after she saw the completed movie, and she was just over the moon with how it turned out.
Yeah, I imagine. So I'm going to get to talk to her and Shelley soon, I hope. But again, wow, it just blew me away, and it is a great great movie. I think film students need to see this as well, to see what you can do. Even on, not the biggest budget, but just right there, and you just know where to put your camera. You know how to aim it.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. I really do.
Well, John, I'm like I said, I'm going to look you up on
Please do.
and we'll get together when I'm in LA sometime and grab a cup of Joe.
Sounds perfect. I love it.
All right, you
Thank you,
take
Tony.
care. Bye bye.
Take care. Bye bye.